October 25, 1944. 0658 hours. Philippine Sea, east of Samar Island. Commander Ernest E. Evans stood on the bridge of USS Johnston, DD 557, watching the horizon through 7x50 binoculars. The Fletcher-class destroyer displaced 2,050 tons. Length, 376 feet. Beam, 39 feet. Draft, 17 feet. 5.5-inch 38 caliber guns. 10 21-inch torpedo tubes. Maximum speed, 36.5 knots. Current speed, 25 knots, maintaining screening position for Taffy 3, a formation of 6 escort carriers and 7 destroyers. The sea was calm. Visibility, 12 nautical miles. Temperature, 84 degrees Fahrenheit. Scattered cumulus clouds at 3,000 feet. No wind. Evans had commanded Johnston since her commissioning in October 1943. Cherokee heritage from Pawnee, Oklahoma. Naval Academy class of 1926. 18 years of service. This was his first destroyer command. The crew numbered 327 men. Average age, 22 years. At 0659 hours, the lookout on the forward fire control platform called down to the bridge. Contact. Bearing 340 degrees. Range, 28,000 yards. Multiple vessels. Evans raised his binoculars. He saw masts. Pagoda superstructures. The distinctive profile of Japanese capital ships. For battleships. 8 cruisers. 11 destroyers. Center force. Vice Admiral Tokyo Kurita commanding. The most powerful surface fleet Japan had assembled since Midway. And they were 14 nautical miles away, steaming directly toward Taffy 3. Evans lowered his binoculars. He did not need to consult tactical doctrine. The mathematics was simple. Taffy 3 had 6 escort carriers with a maximum speed of 17 knots. They carried aircraft for ground support and anti-submarine patrol, not fleet engagement. Their defensive armament consisted of single 5-inch guns. Against battleships mounting 14-inch and 18-inch guns, the carriers would be destroyed in minutes. The 7 destroyers and destroyer escorts screening Taffy 3 were the only barrier between center force and the carriers. Their mission was not to win. Their mission was to buy time for the carriers to launch aircraft and withdraw. Evans turned to his executive officer, Lieutenant Commander Robert Hagen. All ahead flank. Come left to 270. Battle stations torpedo. Hagen stared at him. Sir, we haven't received orders from the flagship. Evans replied, This is my order. Execute. Johnston's 4 Babcock and Wilcox boilers, operating at 600 psi, drove 2 geared turbines developing 60,000 shaft horsepower. The destroyer accelerated from 25 knots to 35 knots in 90 seconds. Black smoke poured from her twin stacks as the engineering crew pushed the plant beyond rated capacity. The other destroyers in Taffy 3, USS Hull, USS Harriman, USS Samuel B. Roberts, received orders from the flagship to form up for torpedo attack. They began accelerating. Johnston was already 2,000 yards ahead, charging alone toward center force. At 0706 hours, the Japanese battleship Yamato opened fire. Range, 34,000 yards, 17 nautical miles. Yamato mounted 9 18.1-inch Type 94 guns. Each shell weighed 3,200 pounds. Muzzle velocity, 2,559 feet per second. The guns could penetrate 16 inches of steel armor at 20,000 yards. Johnston had no armor. Her hull was 5/8-inch steel plate. The first salvo fell 1,000 yards short. Evans watched the towering columns of water rise and collapse. He calculated time to impact. At current speed and bearing, Johnston would be within torpedo range in 12 minutes. Yamato fired again. The second salvo fell 500 yards short. The Japanese gunners were adjusting. Evans ordered left full rudder. Johnston heeled into a hard turn, presenting his stand to Yamato. The maneuver reduced Johnston's profile and forced the Japanese gunners to recalculate deflection. At 0712 hours, the heavy cruiser Kamano opened fire with her 10 8-inch guns. Range, 18,000 yards. The shell screamed overhead and exploded 200 yards to starboard. Johnston continued closing. At 0715 hours, Johnston reached torpedo range. 10,000 yards. Evans ordered right full rudder. The destroyer swung broadside to present all 10 torpedo tubes. Fire torpedoes. 10 Mark 15 torpedoes launched in sequence. Each torpedo was 24 feet long, 21 inches in diameter, weighed 3,841 pounds, and carried a 825-pound TNT warhead. Speed, 46 knots. Range, 6,000 yards at that speed. The torpedoes ran straight and hot toward the Japanese formation. Evans did not wait to observe results. He ordered left full rudder and all ahead flank. Johnston reversed course, retiring behind a smoke screen laid by her own generators. At 0718 hours, 3 explosions rippled through the Japanese formation. The heavy cruiser Yamato, struck by 2 torpedoes, dropped out of formation with her bow destroyed. The battleship Congo took 1 torpedo hit that flooded 2 compartments and reduced her speed to 16 knots. Johnston had scored hits, but she had also expended her primary offensive weapon. No torpedoes remained. At 0723 hours, 3 14-inch shells from the battleship Congo struck Johnston. The first shell penetrated the aft engine room, killing 20 men instantly and destroying one of 2 main turbines. The second shell destroyed the aft 5-inch gun mount, killing the entire crew. The third shell struck the bridge superstructure, destroying radar and fire control systems. Commander Evans was standing on the open bridge wing when the third shell hit. Shrapnel tore through his left hand, severing 2 fingers. His helmet was blown off. His face was cut by debris. He remained standing. Johnston's speed dropped to 17 knots. Maximum speed was now limited to what her remaining turbine could deliver. 1 boiler was offline. The after-fire room was flooded. Steering control was lost. The ship was being steered from the emergency station aft using hand cranks. At 0730 hours, the radio crackled. Flagship orders. All destroyers retire behind smoke. Aircraft will engage enemy. Evans looked at the Japanese formation, now 8,000 yards away and closing. He looked at the escort carriers 12,000 yards behind Johnston, launching aircraft. He calculated time. The carriers needed 20 more minutes to recover distance. Evans countermanded the flagship order. All guns, local control. Load Starshells. Prepare for surface action. The gunnery officer, Lieutenant Edward DeGardi, came to the bridge. Sir, we have 120 rounds of 5-inch high explosive remaining. We have 600 Starshells. Starshells. Illumination rounds. Each shell contained a magnesium flare suspended beneath a small parachute. They were designed to illuminate nighttime targets. They were not designed to damage ships. They were not designed for daylight combat. Evans said, Load Starshells. Set fuse for airburst at 500 yards above target. Target the lead cruiser's bridge. The gun crews loaded Starshells into the 3 remaining 5-inch mounts. At 0734 hours, Johnston opened fire. The first Starshell burst 500 yards above the heavy cruiser Haguro at 0735 hours. The magnesium flare burned at 4,500 degrees Fahrenheit, producing 1.5 million candle power of white light. The flare ignited in daylight, creating a brilliant point source that overwhelmed the optical rangefinders used by Japanese fire control directors. Japanese rangefinders used coincidence optics. 2 images were superimposed. When the images aligned, range was calculated. The system required clear contrast between target and background. The Starshell's intense light source destroyed that contrast. The rangefinder operators saw only white glare. Haguro's fire control director could not obtain a firing solution. The cruiser ceased fire temporarily while the crew attempted to compensate. Johnston fired a second Starshell, then a third, then a fourth. The gun crews established a rhythm: fire, reload, fire. 1 Starshell every 15 seconds per gun. 3 guns firing. 12 Starshells per minute. At 0742 hours, Johnston closed to 4,000 yards from Haguro. The cruiser's secondary battery, 5-inch guns in manual control, opened fire. Johnston took 2 hits. 1 shell destroyed the forward smoke generator. The second shell penetrated the crew's mess deck, killing 8 men. Evans ordered hard left rudder. Johnston turned toward Haguro. The destroyer accelerated to 19 knots, maximum available speed on 1 turbine. The gunnery officer called from below. Sir, what are we doing? Evans replied, We are going to ram. At 0745 hours, Johnston was 2,000 yards from Haguro and closing. The Starshells continued firing. The Japanese cruiser's main battery was still unable to acquire a firing solution. Her secondary guns fired blindly. At 1,500 yards, Johnston took 3 more hits. One shell destroyed the crew berthing area. Another disabled the port side 40mm gun mount. The third started a fire in the forward magazine. At 1,000 yards, damage control reported to the bridge. Flooding forward. Fire in magazine number 1. Recommend abandon ramming course. Evans did not respond. He watched Haguro's hull grow larger through the smoke and flames. At 800 yards, Haguro's captain realized Johnston's intention. The cruiser attempted to turn away, but a vessel displacing 15,000 tons does not turn quickly. At 600 yards, Johnston's bow wave was visible to the Japanese sailors on Haguro's deck. At 400 yards, Johnston struck. The impact occurred at 0748 hours. Johnston's bow, traveling at 19 knots, struck Haguro amidships at a 30-degree angle. The collision tore a 40-foot gash in Haguro's hull below the waterline. 3 compartments flooded immediately. Haguro listed 5 degrees to port. Johnston's bow crumpled. The forward 30 feet of the ship folded upward and back. The collision killed 12 men in the forward section. The ship's speed dropped to 10 knots. But Johnston backed away from Haguro. The engines still functioned. The ship still floated. At 0751 hours, Evans surveyed the damage. Forward gun mount destroyed. Bow crushed. Fires amidships. 33 confirmed dead. Speed, 10 knots maximum. Remaining ammunition, 450 Starshells, 80 rounds high explosive. Evans ordered continue engaging with Starshells. At 0755 hours, the heavy cruiser Chikuma closed to 5,000 yards and opened fire. Johnston returned fire with Starshells. The brilliant flares burst above Chikuma's superstructure. The cruiser's fire control was disrupted. Her salvos fell wide. But Chikuma's captain adapted. He ordered manual fire control and reduced range. At 3,000 yards, manual gunnery became effective. Chikuma's shells began hitting Johnston. At 0802 hours, an 8-inch shell destroyed Johnston's remaining engine room. All power was lost. The ship went dead in the water. Emergency diesel generators provided minimal electrical power for radios and fire pumps, but the main engines were destroyed. Johnston drifted. The Japanese formation closed. At 0810 hours, Commander Evans assembled the crew on deck. The ship was sinking. Fires burned throughout the hull. The Japanese battleships were 6,000 yards away and closing. Evans addressed the crew. We have no power. We have no propulsion. We have no offensive capability remaining. I am ordering abandoned ship. The crew began launching life rafts. Men jumped into the water. The sea temperature was 84 degrees Fahrenheit. Survivable for hours. At 0815 hours, Evans remained on the bridge with a skeleton crew. The ship's pharmacist's mate, Lieutenant Robert Billy, approached Evans. Sir, you need to abandon ship. Evans replied, Not yet. Load the last Starshells. The 2 remaining functional gun mounts, operated manually without power, loaded Starshells. The crews trained the guns on the approaching battleship Yamato, now 5,000 yards away. At 0817 hours, Johnston fired her last 2 Starshells. The flares burst above Yamato's bridge. The massive battleship, displacing 72,000 tons, turned away from the drifting destroyer. Yamato's captain believed Johnston might still have torpedoes. He refused to close further. At 0820 hours, Evans ordered the last crew members to abandon ship. He remained on the bridge. At 0825 hours, the destroyer escort USS Samuel B. Roberts, herself sinking, passed Johnston at 2,000 yards. The crew of Roberts saw Evans standing on Johnston's bridge as the ship settled by the bow. At 0830 hours, USS Johnston capsized and sank. Latitude 11 degrees 46 minutes north. Longitude 126 degrees 22 minutes east. Depth, 20,000 feet. Of Johnston's crew of 327 men, 186 survived. Commander Ernest E. Evans was not among them. He was last seen on the bridge as the ship went under. His body was never recovered. The battle continued for another hour. The escort carriers of Taffy 3 escaped. Center Force withdrew. Vice Admiral Curita, commanding the most powerful surface fleet Japan had assembled, retreated without destroying a single carrier. Post-battle analysis conducted by U.S. Navy historians identified Johnston's contribution. Between 0658 and 0830 hours, Johnston engaged 12 Japanese warships. Using torpedoes, gunfire, ramming, and optical blinding, Johnston sank or damaged. Heavy cruiser Kumano, torpedoed, or destroyed, withdrew from battle. Battleship Congo, torpedoed, speed reduced, effectiveness diminished. Heavy cruiser Haguro, rammed, hull breached, 3 compartments flooded, combat effectiveness reduced 40%. Heavy cruiser Chikuma, optically blinded by Starshells for 18 minutes during critical phase. Battleship Yamato, optically blinded, prevented from closing range. 7 additional warships, engaged with Starshells, fire control disrupted. The tactic of using Starshells as offensive weapons was unprecedented. No doctrinal guidance existed. No training manual covered the technique. Commander Evans improvised based on understanding of Japanese fire control systems and the physics of optical rangefinders. The ramming of Haguro violated fundamental naval doctrine. Destroyers do not ram cruisers. The size differential makes the outcome predictable. The destroyer is destroyed. But Johnston survived the ramming long enough to continue fighting for 42 additional minutes. On February 19, 1946, Commander Ernest E. Evans was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor. The citation noted his conduct during the Battle off Samar and his decision to engage center force without orders. The Johnston's wreck was located in October 2019 by research vessel Petrel at a depth of 20,406 feet, making her the deepest shipwreck ever discovered at that time. The hull is inverted. The bow section is crushed from the ramming. The bridge structure is collapsed. In 1944, military theorists believed naval combat was determined by tonnage, armor, and firepower. Johnston displaced 2,050 tons. The ships she engaged displaced between 15,000 and 72,000 tons. By all calculations, Johnston should have been destroyed in the first 5 minutes. Instead, Johnston fought for 92 minutes against impossible odds using weapons that were not designed as weapons, tactics that did not exist in doctrine, and a willingness to ram that defied every principle of naval warfare. The crew of Johnston called their ship the fightingest ship in the fleet. Commander Evans called her my ship. The Japanese, who witnessed her final stand, called her something else. They called her Musha, warrior, because on October 25, 1944, off the coast of Samar Island, a destroyer with no torpedoes, limited ammunition, 1 working engine, and a crushed bow proved that combat effectiveness is not measured by tonnage or firepower. It is measured by the will to continue fighting when surrender is the only logical option. And USS Johnston, dead in the water, fires burning, sinking by the bow, proved it will by firing her last 2 Starshells at the largest battleship ever constructed. Not to kill, not to destroy, but to blind, to confuse, to make Yamato turn away. Because even in her final moments, Johnston was still fighting. The crew abandoned ship at 0820 hours. The ship sank at 0830 hours. In those final 10 minutes, Commander Ernest E. Evans stood on the bridge of his sinking destroyer, watching his crew reach safety. He never left his post. The captain goes down with his ship. That was the tradition. That was the code. The survivors were rescued over the following 3 days by U.S. Navy vessels. They returned to service. Some received medals. Some received promotions. All received the same question. What was it like on Johnston? Their answer was consistent. They had served under Commander Evans. They had followed his orders. They had fought his ship until she sank. And when historians ask how one destroyer fought the most powerful fleet Japan had assembled, the survivors give the same answer Evans gave when asked why he charged center force without orders. We were built to fight. That's what we did.